So I think one of the things people are most annoyed about are their thin brows. We are all guilty, myself especially, of overplucking our brows. When we were younger, it was the trend, it was cool to have thin brows. Kate Moss, I think that's your fault. So since then, I think all of us have spent our time trying to grow out our brows because big brows are now seriously cool. I haven't plucked my brows for about 6 months, and I went and got mine done at HD Brows. And I'm going to show you some of the things that I've picked up along the way about filling your brows in so that they look as professionally done as possible. Here are the 4 things that you're going to need to do your brows. One of the first tips that I learnt is before filling in your brows, before you start doing anything, you want to brush your brows in downwards with a spoolie. I'll show you as I do it. Obviously, my brows are pretty tame at the moment because I've had them done, so I don't really have a lot of sparse bits sticking out. But what this helps to do when you brush them down is show like a more defined line. So when they're up, obviously they're kind of all over the place. Once you brush them down, you can see more clearly the edges and the outline, and it just helps you to get straighter lines without them looking uneven. So first thing I'm going to do is go in with a brow pencil. Make sure that you choose a pencil that's the same colour as your eyebrows or a shade lighter. I always go a shade lighter because it just stops you from getting that kind of really overdrawn sort of scouse brow look, which is quite unnatural. So first thing I'm going to do is go in with my pencil and start doing the outline. You want to make sure that you're not pressing too hard either, because again, that will leave quite an unnatural finish. I mean, it really depends. A lot of people really like that look. My personal preference is to keep them looking as natural as possible. But if you want to make them darker, obviously, feel free to go for a bit of a darker pencil. As you fill in the outline, just use lots of small, thin strokes as opposed to drawing it like you would with a pen, so that the lines are a bit softer. This area here, so at the front end, whatever you'd call it, of your brow, make sure that the line finishes a bit before, because if you take the line out, again, it will leave kind of a boxy finish. So you want the little hairs here to still be kind of poking out and to look soft. Again, that just makes it look more natural, but you can do whatever you want to do, obviously. So I'm just going all the way around until I finish at the end. So brows obviously have this amazing ability to really like frame your face. I think one of the problems is people think that, everyone seems to think now, probably since Cara Delevingne became really famous, that big bushy brows suit everyone's face, and I think the actual reality is they don't suit everyone's face. This for me is, my brows are quite thick at the moment compared to what they used to be. But for a while I wanted them to be a lot thicker than this. But actually, I don't think that would suit me. So I just think kind of work with what you've got naturally. Don't go really thick and really dark if your brows are quite sparse and quite thin, because the ending result is probably going to look a bit weird. So, also, obviously, there are lots of products out there. I tend to stick to really tiny little twist up pencils as opposed to pencils that you sharpen, because they tend to be not as soft and not as crumbly, and the softer they get, the thicker the line, so it's quite hard to control the other pencils, or I find anyway. I might just not be as good as some other people with them. so just going to carefully, areas where you've got patches, so I have a tiny patch here, I'm not sure if you can see it very well, you want to try and sort of put in little hairs, so don't do thick lines, do sort of little lines so that you're recreating. So that it basically just looks like you've got hairs there. And these pencils are really good for that. Okay. Make sure you always brush everything through. Don't brush your hair with a spoolie, like I just did. Next. So it depends now, you don't have to do this, but areas that are a bit more sparse, you can fill in with the powder. So I'm going to take this powder and just go through and just fill in. Don't use too much powder. If you overload on powder, again, it will look just a tiny bit weird. And definitely don't go too dark on your powder. With powder, I would say stay one lighter, which is what I'm doing. So you want to make sure you're not overloading on the powder either, because that will also leave quite an unnatural finish. Basically with the powder, you just want to go through and any gappy areas or sparse areas, just fill in those. Another thing that's really important that I actually didn't realise for quite a while, the shade of the powder or the pencil or anything that you're using on your brows is really important, not just in terms of light and dark, but in terms of the colour. So if you look at, for example, HD Brows eyebrow pencils, they've got ones that are warmer toned. Obviously there's blonde and there's black and there's dark brown, but it's really important to check the actual tone of your eyebrows, because if you fill in your brows with a brown eyebrow pencil that's really warm toned, almost kind of like an auburney, sort of like a slightly red, it will look really weird. And I've done that so many times. I've just sort of picked up a brow pencil and said, oh yeah, this is brown, it's fine, I'll use it. But actually, it's really important to check the tone, because if it doesn't match the tone of your actual eyebrows, it will be very obvious and it will look weird. So also another thing, if you look at Kylie Jenner's brows, for example, or any of the Kardashians' brows, there's this thing that's sort of, I think they call it like brow fade. And that's this part here again that we were talking about earlier. Instead of using the pencil, use the powder because it's softer. Just make sure I'm tapping off the excess. And you can bring it slightly further forward. Bear in mind, I think I just made the term brow fade up, so just in case anyone's thinking, what on earth is brow fade? I just made that up. But that's what it looks like. So it just means that the front area, you can fill it in, because otherwise obviously it looks a bit weird if it's totally left. But you want it to almost, the colour to sort of fade out, so that as it gets here, it's not as dark and not as strong. So powder is good at that. Let me just brush these through. So next, this is something that's really important, and again, it's something that I never used to do until my younger sister taught me about this trick. She has amazing eyebrows anyway, but they would always look so clean and so precise, and it didn't matter how many times I would fill in my brows, I tried to do anything to my brows, they wouldn't ever have that really clean edge. And one day she said to me, oh, it's because, like, are you putting concealer underneath and around your brows? And I was like, no, I've never done that before. And it turns out that is a massive, massive thing in giving you that really like precise finish. So take your concealer, and you don't want to use too much. Also bear in mind, I've already done my eyeshadow, I've got my eye makeup on. So ideally you would want to do this before you've got your eyeshadow on, because you're going to get a weird line, but for the purpose of this video, just ignore that. And all you want to do is take your concealer and line underneath your brow. This concealer is particularly great for this because it comes with its own tiny little brush. Now you can go on top as well, and I'm sure you've seen loads of other beauty bloggers doing that. I personally don't like doing that because it just makes them look a bit too, I don't know, like a little bit fake, because they're almost like standing out on this extra section that's just a different shade from your skin tone, and it looks a bit weird. So I just do underneath and use my finger to blend it in, like that. I'm not sure if you can see the difference just yet, but it does make a really big difference. And I'm going to do the same on this side. Also, it just means, obviously my brows have been done, so they are pretty neat already. But if you have got random little tiny brows poking out here and there, the concealer will just cover those. So it actually helps. It's like you've got them done. It's like a little secret, really. I mean, it's obviously not going to give you the same effect as a brow wax, but, you know, every little helps. Okay. Next step. I am obsessed with highlighting in all forms. I think everyone is. And using a bit of a highlighter, it doesn't matter what highlighter, I'm just using an actual brow highlighter because it's easier, but you can use any highlighter you want. And you just want to put it just underneath the arch, sort of blend it in around, but don't do what I've just done with the concealer. So it's not as much as drawing like a whole line, but you want to just put it at the highest point on your brow bone, underneath your brow, and it just helps to sort of lift the brow. So I'm just going to put a little bit under here. Don't worry if a bit of it gets sort of in your brow. I'm saying don't worry because that's what's just happened to me. But it doesn't actually matter, and you can go over it with a pencil. Another thing I think is quite important is the shape of your brows. Obviously you can't actually change the whole entire shape of your brows at home, or you could if you're plucking them and waxing them yourself. But my brows, I used to always have my brows quite arched, and if you look at them now, they're much flatter. It's actually like an anti-aging technique, but if you keep your brows flatter, it will help your face to look more youthful. So just bear that in mind when you're going to get, I mean, most people think that you should have your brows really arched and it opens your eyes and makes your eyes look wider and bigger, which I thought, and it does sometimes, but I think it's quite nice to have more of a softer, flatter look. So when you go and ask your brow technician next time, maybe just think about the shape and talk about the shape and like get her to say what she thinks look best on your face. Okay, the final thing is brow gel. You don't have to use a brow gel, really, it's not like massively important, but I like using a brow gel because number one, it obviously sets your brows, so they're not really gonna move all over the place. And number two, I, again, as I said earlier, like the natural finish. So I use my brow gel to just brush up my brows. So this might seem a bit weird. Some people don't like this look. I personally love it. But so instead of taking your brow gel and going round like that, you just need to brush them up and then round. So you're still keeping it round towards the end. You're not going for like full-blown Wolverine here. But the front, you're just brushing up like that. As I said before, it might not be everyone's cup of tea, but if you don't want that look, you can literally just brush them round and set them so they're perfectly straight. I quite like this look. And that's pretty much how I do my brows every day. If you like this look and you want to give it a go, make sure you remember to take a photo, upload it to your Instagram and hashtag us so we can see all of your amazing brows. The hashtag is Beauty Advisor, and we're going to be posting tutorials every day this week, so there's going to be loads and loads of beauty videos for you guys. If you've got any comments, questions, any ideas on what you'd like to watch us do in our next tutorial, any makeup looks, make sure you comment below and let us know. Thanks, bye.